when you grow up in East London, one of the things that it teaches you is that core resilience, right? So nobody is handing anything to you at any point in time. There is no, because obviously parents, first generation as well. So there's no inheritance, or there's no like silver spoon or anything like that. So you absolutely have to work for it, and you have to work like you could lose everything tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And that is what's instilled, in my culture, in my business every single day. Yes, we've achieved X, but it doesn't stop there. It goes to, as far as we can possibly go. We've got to keep on going. I don't think I would be here today, sitting here in this seat on this podcast with you, had I not grown up in East London and had I not gone through the kind of hardships that I went through. Because, again, that's what makes you, you.
I'm Max. Welcome back to Black Income Creators Podcast, and today I'm joined by
Segun Akinwoleola.
And your business?
The founder of the Gym Kitchen.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us today. Segun, tell us a little bit about how you got started on your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so it depends on whether you want the long story or the short story. So
a little bit of time.
We've got a bit of time. Okay, lovely. So I grew up in East London, a single parent household, and from there you always have some sort of entrepreneurial streak within you. So, it was buying and selling things, nothing illegal, but just in terms of like trying to make money on the side of going to school, etc. I had a lot of fun in the area, but it was riddled with gangs, knife crime, gun crime. So one of the things that I didn't do was really focus in school. So I didn't really get the greatest of GCSEs. And what happened there was I actually didn't manage to get into college. Well, I didn't get into college for the course that I wanted to do. So I had to go to college and retake my GCSEs, like in maths and English, because I really wanted to go to university and be the first one to go to uni, of course. And then what happened there was it was good that I went to that, did that, and then it was down to applying for unis. And one of the things I wanted to do was stay in East London. So I wanted to go to Queen Mary University. But unfortunately, I didn't get into Queen Mary University, which was, super disappointing. But again, my second choice was actually the University of Surrey. And I always talk about this being probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, because being locked up in East London, you only really have one mindset. My first lecturer at University of Surrey, I still remember walking into the lecture. I had my afro comb in my hair, my trousers low, and everybody looked back at me like, where does this guy think he is? Is this like some sort of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air type thing? Well, yeah. And it was just hilarious, but also reflective, because it was like almost, this isn't the environment that you've grown up in. You now need to learn more about new environments. So I really started to learn more, mingle with people with different races and ethnicities. And that's where I actually learned to network and learned to almost connect with individuals that I had no relation with. And one of the things for me, which was super, really, really cool, was the fact that I saw people who were rich working harder than me. And I'm like, I'm broke, man. Why am I not working as hard as these people? This don't make any sense whatsoever. So I had the extra fight in me in that not only have I come from East London, not only have I not got the greatest of backgrounds, but I can actually do and achieve more. So I left there graduating with a first-class degree in business management. So I always share that story as to, I had this entrepreneurial thing that I wanted to do, but then, I graduated. So whilst at the University of Surrey, though, as well, they really encourage you to do placement years. So I did a placement year at a company called Coty, which is, it's like a celebrity, they own celebrity fragrances like Adidas body spray and Lady Gaga and all of those kind of, different products. And I was marketing assistant there for a year. And because I did so well, and it's always different in those environments because you're like the only young black one. So even to get that job I was so happy about, because I was trying to get so many other placements, but didn't manage to get them. But they took me back straight away. So that's where I started my career in this thing called FMCG. So FMCG stands for fast moving consumer goods, for those that don't know. And it's kind of almost the art of how do products get from a factory all the way onto the shelves that we purchase them every day. And what are the different metrics that happen around that to deliver that? So the supply chain, marketing, PR, the whole piece in finance, IT, just how it gets from there. So we always take for granted that you walk into a supermarket, you pick up a product, and then you almost just think it just appeared there. So I was so fascinated by that that I'd always said I wanted to launch my own business. Now, I tried loads of different consumer goods businesses, probably like 3 or 4. The first one I tried was popcorn called Exoticorn, and I tried a drink. I tried like plant-based vegan burgers and stuff like that. And it never did work. And the reason it didn't work was because I wasn't super passionate about it. It was just kind of almost figuring out how to make money. But I always start this story as in 2016, I actually saw there was a real gap in the market. So as a gym goer, a health conscious individual, there was the rise in sports nutrition. So you started to see protein put on a number of different products all over the place. So I went, okay, that's great, but where's the same translation within ready meals? So I couldn't go to the ready meals fixture in a major retailer and get something that would cater to me. I had to create it myself. So then it was meal prep, scratch cooking, all of those kind of things that people used to do for the week ahead. So chicken breast, broccoli, brown rice for the week ahead. And I'm going, again, I work in this industry. Surely there's an easier way to be able to do this. And then the last one was where I started to see, when you work in fast-moving consumer goods, you tend to have a little bit of a lens of the retailer on. So when I say a lens of the retailer, you're seeing things through the retailer's eyes, right? And what was happening was they were losing a lot of shoppers to, like Pret and Itsu, because they were creating these fresher, healthier, kind of solutions and propositions for customers. So I was going, if I put those three together and create a brand, I will be onto something here. And that's where the gym kitchen started. So yeah, long story, into as condensed as I can, but that's how the gym kitchen started. And I'm sure we'll go on to, why, etc. and all that kind of thing.
There's something there that you mentioned. I want to just take a step back around placements and the value of placements and networking, etc. And you said that you'd applied. I mean, do you even remember how many applications you made at that time?
Yeah, I want to say it was almost over 100 applications. And the thing is, right, so when you grow up I'm a Nigerian household. When you grow up in a Nigerian household, it's doctor, lawyer, banker, accountant, blah, blah, and so on. So in my head, yeah, exactly. In my head, I just thought, okay, I'm going to go into accounting or I'm going to go into banking or something along those lines. But I didn't, again, this is where I take for granted the world that's outside of that in business. There's so many different areas that encapsulate how you get a product from start to finish that we need to start coaching, the next generation on.
Yeah. So I think it's that thing really of like, how do people who don't have any experience get the experience?
Yeah.
Especially young people, like what can they do to sort of, I don't know, help themselves, I guess.
Yeah, do you know what? One of the things I always think about is how I was as a youngster. So I was always thinking about, okay, if I want to get some experience, I need to tell people what I want, what I can do for them, right? So I get a lot of people saying, oh, can you mentor me? Can you this? Can you that? And you can only mentor a certain amount of people. But if someone comes to you and reframes it and goes, how can I help you with X, Y, Z? If someone came to me and said, I really want to do your social media, they are going to learn from me. Do you see what I mean? So it's almost like having the youngsters reframe their mindset into, how can I help you? And in turn, they will learn from that too. There are obviously like loads of different schemes, kind of out there in terms of placements, and it's how you then elevate yourself from a, that different perspective in terms of learn more, be wanting to learn, be willing to network. But I talk about networking without, actual intentions or expectations. Because if you network without expectations, you never know who you might meet, So one of the things I love is, if you go up north, people on the train will just talk to you. They'll just chat to you. That is what I talk about in terms of networking without expectations. You're sitting by the beach in Spain, just have a chat with someone randomly. You never know who they are, who they might be, and where in your journey they might be able to help take you somewhere.
So what is the gym kitchen then?
Yeah, so the gym kitchen creates high protein, macro counted meals and pizzas and food to go line. So we've got a number of different products, but the whole ethos of it is the gym kitchen aims to make your life easier in terms of giving you access to healthier products, but also tastier products. So what we've tried to do here is take the stress out of trying to eat healthier and actually add to it as opposed to take it away. So if I step back a little bit, when it was back in 2016, the only health brands were those that would go, calorie counting. So they'd basically take a meal that's supposed to be about 500 grams or 400 grams to serve you, and they go, here's a 250 gram meal. That's what we consider as health. Whereas my perspective on health was actually, why don't we keep it the same size, but we'll change the ingredients, so we'll use like quinoa, lentils, pulses, grains, broccoli, veg, fresh chicken, and more additives to it in terms of like adding to the product as opposed to taking away from the product. And that's what I've tried to achieve, launching in 2020 and now on this journey ever since.
Who was your first customer?
Yeah, so it's a long story, right? So what I did was I met this guy called Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, who's also known as the Black Farmer, so you may or may not know him. And this is when it was 2015 and I was working at Revlon selling cosmetics. It was actually at the Black British Business Award. So I'd won Rising Star in Consumer and Retail, and he'd won Black British Business Person of the Year. And again, within FMCG, there's hardly any black people. So for me, it was just great to see this guy in FMCG, but it was actually also great to see he was actually running his own business. He's got his own brand in the major supermarkets. So I was just fascinated, just wanted to have a chat with him. A chat, long story short, ended up with me working for him part-time as his head of sales, whilst also building my brand. So I got to be able to almost like, without so much risk, building my brand, because he would allow me to do that in terms of, investing in the brand, etc. And what happened was I managed to get myself a meeting with Morrison's back in 2018. And in that meeting, my sole purpose and my sole aim wasn't even to try and get listed in Morrison's. It was really to figure out who could potentially make this prompt for me. So I went to them, at the end of the meeting, finished presenting the Gym Kitchen range, and I said to them, do you have any manufacturing partners you would recommend that I go to speak about this product? And they said, yes, go speak to these guys. So then obviously, as you do, you have to then try and wing your way into, all right, now I've got to get the manufacturer on side. So I said to them, oh, look, Morrison's really want this brand. They've asked me to come to you guys to create this for us. And we went on this journey of creating it. But I give that story because obviously it's not as easy as you just rock up and you go, here are my products. Can you have them? That 2 years between 2018 and 2020, nobody took the brand. So I was like going into meetings, I was chasing down on LinkedIn who, someone just listened to me, give me an opportunity, because I knew once it got into one retail, it would do very well, and then I'd be able to get it into the rest of the retailers. So then eventually managed to get it into Asda, was the first one. So after Morrison's introduced them, Asda actually launched it. And that's where it did very, very well for them. And then started to because one of the things when you're in FMCG or consumer goods, they always talk about how do you bring a new shopper into the fixture, right? So a little bit of an education section on FMCG. So everybody comes to me and they go, oh, how do I get my product on the shelf? And I always go, you have to take a step back and you go, look at what else is on the shelf and think about whether it's actually needed. Because in order for you to get your products on the shelf, something has to come off. They can't just expand the shelf space and put more products on there. So you've almost got to really do a job of convincing what they call buyers. So they're all buyers. Convincing the buyers on my products are going to do well because of X, Y, Z. And in my case, they were going to do well because there was a shopper that wasn't catered for in this fitness, health conscious, gym going environment that needs this proposition. Do you see what I mean? So that's how we got it in.
And in terms of manufacturing in the UK, because I think that's probably what maybe puts some people off, because it seems quite daunting finding manufacturers in the UK. So I know I work in Grimsby, for example, so I know that Grimsby has a lot of sort of food production, food manufacturing, but it's like, is it one of those things where it's predominantly up north and you've got to start making those kind of inroads?
Yeah, to be honest, the manufacturers are all over the place. So like, for instance, some of our products are produced in Italy, they're produced, kind of far and wide. But what I say with that is you have to have a real category story. And I talk about a category story in a category is a specific area in a store, right? So let's say, for instance, is soft drinks. Imagine trying to get a product into Tesco in that soft drinks fixture when it's Coca-Cola, it's Fanta, it's everybody. What is your real point of difference that you're going to bring to this fixture? Because that's the only way you're going to then get the manufacturer on board as well. Because manufacturers, all they want to do is press a button and then turn the button off. They want to just print hundreds of thousands of units just straight out. They don't want to be messing around with small startups. But you do have the different spectrums on. You might have like a kitchen, for instance, as well. And if I step back again, so drinks is obviously, it's hard to get into the big major retailers. but it's actually easy to start building a brand elsewhere because it's easy to make a drink. You know, you could hire a kitchen, blend some drink and put it in a can, or not in a can, but in a bottle, and then start selling that. But it's when you start to want to get into supermarkets at the scale that they then go, "Ooh, what's going on here?" And retail isn't the only channel as well. So I talk about channels as in like area you can sell. You've got these things called food service, which is where you sell to the likes of Bid Food and Breaks, who then serve to the cafes, the restaurants, the schools, the colleges. So there's like a bigger world out there in terms of where you could go with things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does make sense. So you said that you launched in 2016, started those conversations with Morrison's 2018, and then Asda was like 2020.
That's correct, yeah.
So that means that you literally were there when the Brexit decision happened, but then it was you weren't affected, and you said one of your manufacturers was in Italy.
That's
What
correct.
effect has that had in terms of like Europe, well, UK pulling out of?
So it's hard to speak on for me because obviously, like you say, I missed some of that. But what I can say is for a lot of my colleagues or like friends, counterparts who set up businesses, it was extremely challenging. You know, because all of the customs taxes, all of the paperwork that started to come through that just made it almost to certain prices where it just wouldn't exist. But I would say that since then, I have had to face a number of different issues because imagine I launched in January of 2020. In 3 months' time, did I know that we would be off the shelves completely? People are only buying toilet roll and chicken breast at this time. So it's absolutely crazy. So we got wiped out. And then only the saving grace is the fact that we did very well between January and March, that we were able to get back onto the shelves in July. So going from that, then straight into cost of living crisis, inflation. You know, I was talking about this the other day with someone saying when we first launched our meals, I think they were about £3.25 maybe. Now they're £3.75, pushing on £4. You know, that's how bad inflation has been in terms of pricing for the consumer. And obviously everything that the government continue to do now in flexing and changing things and trying to, rob Peter to pay Paul in terms of increasing NI, etc. Because really the customer or the end user is just going to see it in front of them when they go to the fixture.
And you mentioned cash flow. So how did you cash flow between sort of 2016 and, well, how did you do that?
Yeah. So
It's quite a long lead.
very, very long time. But one of the things that I did, right, and I say this to a lot of people, is try and work and have a job that pays you and use your job to then fund your business. So during the time of 2016 to 2020, there was no way I was going to work on this like full time because nobody was taking the products from me. So in the evenings or the weekends, that's when I'm emailing the buyers or I'm setting up the emails ready to send on a Monday morning just before I go to work. And then what I did then was in 2020 is where I then started to, I was still like consulting part-time. So I always say to individuals, right, one of the best entrepreneurs tend to come from working within that environment of where they want to go, simply because they've seen it before. They've also learned on somebody else's money, if you see what I mean. So, you know, you get access to learning and development. If something goes wrong, it's not going to bankrupt the business because they tend to be like, you know, hundreds of millions of pounds worth. That gives you a good kind of almost like learning ground to then base it off of. So I then was like, well, I stay in work. And because I had 10 years of experience, I knew it wasn't going to be super hard to then go back into FMCG or wherever I want if it all went wrong. So what I did was I started to consult. And this is where I talk about working for Wilfred part-time. I then was like, okay, we're getting a little bit closer now. Let me work part-time. And the fun fact is I didn't actually pay myself until, I want to say it was like early 2023, which I actually regret a little bit because I'm also like, I think that entrepreneurs should pay themselves something, even if that is, you know, if you're getting some turnover and it's coming in, even if you pay yourself £100, at least you will be getting, you know, you'll be feeling like you're getting the value. Whereas for me, it was like, well, don't worry about that. Just plow everything straight back into the bit, everything. But if it all went wrong, I would have felt just like horrible because I'm just doing this day in, day out and not really getting the rewards from it. But yeah, that's how I funded it really. Just like every penny I got was going straight back into it. to just create it and develop it.
And I think the other thing is about the entrepreneurial journey is like it matters if you're like your family structure. So if you're in a relationship or if you're still living at home, it allows you a little bit more flexibility to not have to, not pay yourself if you like at the
Yeah.
beginning, etc. But it's a bit difficult. In terms of like the avatar, so who typically buys from you? Who is it? Is it mainly guys? Is it quite mixed?
Yeah, so it's a real mix, right? So it's probably like 60-40 in favor of female. And that is great for us in terms of the audience that we're going for, because we want is a mainstream type of shopper, if that makes it. We're seeing it's like 18 to 35s, but we are seeing a little bit older, a little bit of an older shopper buy into the brand, and they're coming from X Weight Watchers, X Slimming World, kind of have gone and achieved what they wanted to in terms of goals, and then decide that they wanted to like come into the brand and think a little bit more like holistic health type thing. And yeah, they are a convenience shopper. So someone that's got, super time poor, needs something that's going to be able to deliver what it says on the tin, but actually also do it without compromise. And this is where I talk about taste. I don't ever want anybody to say this was a bland meal, I didn't enjoy eating healthy, because that was me 10 years ago. Not enjoying eating healthy, eating this bland chicken and broccoli and brown rice, and I just wanted to do something different. And now we've tapped into other areas to help complete people's lifestyles in terms of the basket. So it's like we're in yogurts, for instance. We have pancakes, we have pizzas, like I mentioned, frozen meals to capture the different mission on versus chilled. You might be picking one up to have today, frozen, you want to leave it in the freezer for a couple of weeks for when it's a real challenge to get something quick, but you don't want to fall off the bandwagon. So yeah, so many opportunities to kind of go after and so many different areas to go after that it's just ever more exciting in terms of growing it. And we're pretty much in most of the retailers as well. So yeah, Tesco, Asda, Morrisons, Sainsbury's, Co-op, Ocado, Amazon, Morrisons. Yeah, if I didn't say Morrisons already. So pretty much in most of them.
Where would it be at Sainsbury's? Like which section? Because
So Sainsbury's, we have our chilled meals. So if you walk down the chilled ready meals fixture, we're also in pancakes, which sit in like the desserts fixture, and then we've got our frozen ready meals, which sit in the frozen ready meals freezer.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. That makes sense. And what is your bestseller?
Best-selling product or best-selling product area? Best-selling product area tends to be food to go. We're in the Tesco meal deal, for instance. So that's, kind of our best-selling kind of product area. But our chilled meals are also pretty much on par, to be fair. They both like do very, very well.
Okay, all right. But if someone was going to test it out, which would you recommend? What's your favourite chilled meal?
What's my favourite chilled meal? Is probably our meat feast pasta. Unbelievable. So meatballs, chicken in a nice tomatoey sauce with some penny pasta. It's sensational.
Oh, I mean, I wouldn't be able to have it because I'm gluten free, but I'll buy for my mum. She can taste test.
Brilliant. She'll be your taster. They're amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
Wow. I won't say like regrets, but what mistakes do you think you made along the way that if you had, with hindsight, you may not have gone down there, or you might have done it a bit differently?
Yeah, so what would I have done, right? So when COVID hit, what happened there was I actually decided I was going to launch some protein powder. And that was probably the biggest mistake, lost us some money, because why was I trying to launch protein powder when the gyms weren't open? But the way in which I saw it was that between January and March, between March when COVID actually hit and July, I wanted to be able to keep the brand momentum up, and I wanted to keep on selling something or making noise for that specific consumer. But in hindsight, it wasn't the greatest of decisions. I always say that one of not regrets, because I don't really have too many regrets other than that really in terms of building the brand. But I would have loved to have started earlier, but I wasn't given the opportunity to start earlier by one of the retailers. So that might have been, should I have tried to do direct to consumer quicker? Because we don't really have direct to consumer, but there were a lot of direct to consumer businesses there. So should I have looked to that? I don't know again. But again, I don't like to have too many regrets, because every step of the journey has enabled me to get where I am now, and kind of to build the business that I've got now, which is changing people's lives.
Okay, so I'm assuming then in March 2020, one of the conversations would have been about online.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what made you think actually probably no?
The logistics of it. So it was too hard to, within that short space of time, jump on the direct-to-consumer boom. So if you think about it, right, our products have got, well, at that time, we only had chilled meals as well, remember? So at that time, our chilled meals, let's say, for instance, on average, have got 7 days shelf life. So how do you pick, pack, get a box sorted, get it outside people's houses within those days without freezing it? Because also the freezing of those chilled meals does affect the quality. Then it was great. So in doing all of that, but then knowing in a supermarket, you could have got that meal at £3.75, I'm now going to have to charge you £6 for it. So the economics just didn't make sense in terms of why would a consumer go, yes, I'll get that. And in that short space of time, because we didn't know, remember, when things were going to come back on shelf or when the world was going to get back to normal again. So we could have spent all of that time doing that for it to completely flop and then go nowhere with it and spend more money just like we did in terms of the meal replacement drinks and stuff like that.
And I think the thing about FMCG is that you've got that thing of like, it is a very, very competitive space. Like you talked about the soft drinks and trying to get, trying to compete with Coca-Cola, to me, it's very, very difficult to do. How, as a new brand, do you do that in the sort of modern times? Because I know a lot of FMCG sort of like would pay to have their products put on certain shelves, like eye level, whatever, or like a special kind of display, etc. Yep. How do you sort of like differentiate yourself and get the
So we have to invest in kind of doing that and spreading the word. So what I started off by doing was I really started off by building a community, and that was the exciting thing that kind of almost got us got us together. So back in 2016, before we'd launched, we probably had about 5,000 followers. And these were followers because I went around doing podcasts, kind of like mini podcasts. So I was interviewing fitness enthusiasts, fitness individuals, creating a bit of a podcast type thing, but also preempting that this is what I was going to do. So one of the things about building a community is they then back you and they then follow you and they then spread the word for you. Because I was going, guys, I was standing outside gyms asking people, what do you do for meal prep? What do you do for eating? And everyone's like, oh, that's a great idea, actually. When it's out, let me know and I'll repost it. So almost like jumping on the influence a bit really, really early in that journey. And what I got from there was when we launched, we went pretty much viral. So you then had that customer coming in. And then it was like, how do we work with, kind of fitness professionals, fitness enthusiasts? So then the limited spend that we were able to spend, kind of in store and on all of those kind of things is then kind of almost counteracted by the fact that we've got people going into store to find us because we've gone so deep in building this community that allows us to get there. Then obviously there are things that you do in store in terms of promotions. So like those are the deals where it might be like save 50p. So obviously working with our manufacturing partners and everybody on that to be able to achieve that. But also, fund using marketing funds to fund like shelf barkers. We've done outdoor home. So shelf barkers are like those little tickets on the front, which then talk about the brand. We've done like out of home campaigns, national stations. And, every single year we go bigger and we go better. And this is where I talk about we reinvesting money into the brand or the business to then just keep on growing it and growing it and growing it and growing it and not taking any money. So then you've got some money to be able to spend on growing the brand and just keep continuously pushing it, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you talk about, the need to grow a community, so that when you did launch, it wasn't just kind of like to a dead space, like to silence, I guess. Tell me a little bit about how you've grown your team, because that's also quite difficult sometimes for entrepreneurs. You're used to working by yourself and being accountable only to yourself. Now you have to.
Definitely, yeah. So I've got a team about seven actually. And then we use external freelancers. So how did I go about growing it or developing it, right? So what I did was started off. So in 2020, I was pretty much by myself, just utilizing freelancers, and that's a really smart thing to do, right? So you get a freelancer in, you can pay them a day rate, and then they'll do like a couple of days work, a couple of days a week for you, or a couple of days a month, depending on what you're after. You then start to grow that to become full time, if that makes sense. So what then happened was I then needed to recruit someone that could help me on sales. So recruit a salesperson, but also recruited like a marketing person too. So what I, kind of am learning as I go along is that recruitment takes time, it's hard work, and you need to get the right characters in that will help you deliver on the goals that you want to achieve. So ever since then, like I say, I've grown the team, but I've started to think a little bit more of like levels and what functions need to grow. So, recruited a brand manager, marketing manager. And what's happened here is she's come in and she's gone, yep, we need systems, we need processes, because on this growth trajectory and growth journey, we need things to be mapped down. We need them to be, just able to track. We need, you know what I mean? It's that kind of stuff where it's great, because an entrepreneur's mindset is just go, 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 win, 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 win. But actually, when people come from other companies as well, where they've actually had some structure, this can be hard for them in terms of what's the priorities, what's the focus, what do they do next, how do they then develop and win. And you do a lot of learning from that. And also, like, you start to get smarter with this as well, in terms of, well, one of the things we did was bring in like a HR freelancer, for instance. Well, we never needed a HR freelancer before, but that's there just in case there were any questions, or we need to make some decisions that require, that involve people, etc. So there, it's kind of almost like a consultation piece that helps us just to be the best that we can, make sure the team's structured in the right way, and up for, to deliver what I want to achieve in terms of deliverables.
Is the whole team fully remote?
Yeah, exactly. And that obviously is also it's a benefit, but also a challenge in the same right, because again, you have to trust the team that they're working, that they're delivering, and whether they are or not, simply because you'll see the outputs and the work that kind of goes on. And if they're not, then obviously you have conversations in terms of what do you do next, and how do you navigate this different world of is a startup, is a small brand even the one for you type thing. But no, we've been good so far, which has been great. And again, it's just about how do we keep on developing that. Do we actually at some point look at having part of a team which does sit in London or somewhere that kind of almost like is a bit of a hub, and then some people are remote in terms of like other pieces of department. But again, it's something to look at and think about for the future for sure.
I think the biggest challenge is really organizational culture. So it's very difficult for somebody coming in post-COVID to any organization and learning how everybody else works quickly, because they're not in the same office to sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, Segun comes in a bit late, but he stays late, that kind of mindset. It takes a while online to figure it all out and stuff like that. So I think that's the biggest challenge I've seen across the board is, people just struggling to sort of come in post 2020.
And you know what, that's always going to be a challenge with the new generation, right? So you've got to remember that there are some people that are just beginning to work and just getting into working and just getting into jobs, but you've got to decide as a founder or as a leader whether those are the right people for you. That's the simplicity of it, because businesses won't grow with people who can't hit the ground running, do what they say they're going to do, go above and beyond, want to work hard. And I always say that you don't have to work in a challenger environment. No one's forcing them to. So, kind of almost go out and find yourself in a bigger business, because then you will get the everyday, this is just your job. Whereas here, I see it as there's so much more opportunity to be had, because you could get involved in so many different areas, and it's exciting to be in that challenger space. But again, it's not for everybody.
It isn't for everybody, and some people do need a more corporate, fixed type of but I don't think they know that, so you kind of always have to guide them towards that decision. What kind of leader would you say you were?
This is where, I don't know, self-reflection comes in, isn't it? What kind of leader am I? This is what kind of leader I want to be. So I want to be a leader that initiates an open and honest conversation on where we want to go and how we can deliver that together, right? So it's almost like how you bring the team together on this journey, like to respectful, almost like that culture of learning, that anyone can learn from me, but anyone can learn from anybody, and kind of how that works. Just in terms of work ethic as well, so showing that I am a hard worker, but I'm also a smart worker. So I'm not talking or pushing people to work from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. It's not that. It's how can you get your job done in those hours to the best of the ability that drive that and that grow that, being passionate, being enthusiastic, again, just being trustworthy and having people believe that I can, or where I'm trying to go makes sense for everybody. And then it's coupled with the systems that I put in place, because that helps with the trust to then kind of go on this journey together. So yeah, so it's hard to say, what kind of leader am I, but what kind of leader do I want to be and do I strive to be every day? They're the kind of things that I strive to do every day.
And you mentioned obviously coming from East London, going via University of Surrey and sort of like ending up back in the East sort of area. How much of that do you think influences your business?
Yeah, do you know what? Every single day. And I say every single day because when you grow up in East London and you have, kind of little, I've got 2 younger brothers and like I say, mum, single parent, brought up 3 boys. So yeah, bless her. One of the things that it teaches you is that core resilience, right? So nobody is handing anything to you at any point in time. There is no, because obviously parents, first generation as well. So there's no inheritance or there's no like silver spoon or anything like that. So you absolutely have to work for it, and you have to work like you could lose everything tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? And that is what's instilled, in my culture, in my business every single day. Yes, we've achieved X, but it doesn't stop there. It goes to, as far as we can possibly go. We've got to keep on going. You don't just settle at this. And also there's the element of, I need to coach the next generation of black entrepreneurs who also want to be in food and drink. Like I say, there's still 15 years later, there's still a lack of diversity in FMCG. How do I teach these younger generation that they can have their brand in major supermarkets across the UK and, in other countries? That is super important to me. So look, I don't think I would be here today, sitting here in this seat on this podcast with you, had I not grown up in East London and had I not gone through the kind of hardships that I went through, because again, that's what makes you you.
And you talk about your mum, how involved is she now, if at all, in the business?
Yeah, she's never been involved, to be honest. She's kind of always just had a bit of a back seat in just watching and seeing it go. Yeah, mum's just cool in that. So, I say that in an African household, they always say, doctor, lawyer, engineer. But she never really forced too much of that on us because of the fact that, she just wanted us to do well and wanted us to enjoy our lives and do whatever we kind of almost see fit. But the stereotypes just in general are doctor, lawyer, engineer type thing.
I think that's the issue, isn't it? We have the sort of very fixed ideas, and it's nice to see first generation parents kind of changing that a little bit,
Definitely.
Their own experiences, etc. I know that you're into mentoring. Can you talk a little bit about that? Sorry.
Yeah. So in terms of mentoring, that for me again is almost like, so I don't like have specific mentees, but what I call it is like kind of almost like inadvertent mentoring, if that even makes sense. But where someone might come to me and say, I've got this fantastic idea and I'll spend an hour with you just coaching you and telling you what you need to do on it. And then I'll say, if you ever need me, let me know. Because what happens with mentoring is it can become draining. It can not, become not as exciting. I've got a business to run. So that's the first and foremost, most important thing. But I do also have a responsibility for the next generation of young entrepreneurs that come out. So if someone has a food brand, almost every black founder that's come to me, I've just sat down with them, given them advice, because I think, again, it's so important in doing that. I've been back into schools and into my old college. I was there not too long ago, sharing the story and the journey of getting my products there with their business department, the business students doing that. I just think it's so important that the next generation see all of us, because again, I talk about not really having role models. So my role models when I grew up, it's 50 Cent, Jay-Z, no black business people, at 10, who am I looking up to as a black business person that kind of existed at my age? No one that I could see. So again, it was really trying for me to try to be that person that they can look up to and go, actually, I want to be like him, or I want to have some sort of business or learn something.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, the two people you mentioned are really savvy businessmen.
Yeah, but at the time they weren't. And that's
didn't
what,
know-
yeah, exactly. Whereas now things have changed and life's changed, but then it's just rap, isn't it? And you know, the stereotypes are, oh, what can black people do? Oh, they can be rappers, they can be footballers, they can be basketball players. But actually, why can't they have their own brand in a supermarket shop?
You mentioned working for the black farmer, and obviously you've got kind of like an FMCG business. When you were branding it, did you think about sort of it being more generic and not being a black brand, if
Yeah.
that makes sense?
Yeah, so I say yep, but the story here is I was a frustrated gym goer that could not have access to healthy eating. So that doesn't come with a colour. That doesn't come with an ethnicity. That doesn't come with, you know, with any sort of demographic. There are a lot of people that comes with. Do you see what I mean? So it's not like I'm trying to position myself as a jerk sauce which is catered to a specific audience. It was always having to be a mainstream opportunity because gym goers come in all shapes, sizes, races, colours, demographics. Do you see what I mean? So that's the reason that it is a mainstream opportunity. But I also do say to black entrepreneurs all the time, in that we need to stop pigeonholing ourselves into just being something that serves 3% of the population. Like, I want you to create stuff that's going to scale. You know, that's going to, and unless there's obviously a real passion or a need for it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if you want to win and you want to create a big, long-lasting business, then it's how wide of the market can you capture. And if you've got a niche, then it's likely that it's going to be a small, you know, you can get a big niche and you can capture the whole of that 3%, and that's fine. But if you want to really scale, then how can you look at the 100% or at least the 70%? You know, gym goers, almost like 50% of the population or 40% of the population go to the gym. That's massive. Not all of them are going to eat our products, of course, but it's a market that I can go after to kind of achieve access.
Yeah, and I mean, the big difference is that Emmanuel Jones is not targeting the black audience.
Exactly.
Consumer. So it's not like, okay, these are these are sausages made by a black guy, buy them for. It's not like that at all. So
Exactly.
I came across them by accident in Sainsbury's, and I was like, oh, they're gluten free. Okay, I can have these.
And what he did well there was he used like I say this as well, he used his USP to create something mainstream. So part of his story, which people don't really know, is that he always wanted to own a farm. And he then managed to own a farm after like working, you know, consulting for loads of different brands and launching his own PR company. And in his local area, they kept calling him the Black Farmer. So he was like, oh my goodness, this is an amazing brand name because nobody can steal it. I am a black farmer, so why don't I do that? And then obviously there was a gap within gluten-free because of the intolerances that people had, and nobody was creating a gluten-free sausage. So that was his angle to get into the retailers. Now has created a massive brand, has got shops all over the place because of that. So again, that was him using his USP, unique superpower, but creating a massive brand out of it.
Okay. So you want it to be... The thing is with ranges, it's quite interesting, isn't it? So if you think about Slimming World and Weight Watchers, it's a lot of it is chilled foods, isn't it? It's in that space. But I guess is it kind of like you try, let's say you try a meal for a certain period of time, and then if it's not picking up, then you let it go. How do
Exactly,
you...
that's right. Yeah. So with retail, you either have to be proactive, or you'll get shot for being reactive. So let's say, for instance, I've got 5 products on the shelf. If number 5 doesn't work better than something else that's on that fixture, then they might just give that something else more space to it. So either during that time when I've launched number 5, I either take it out quickly and put a new flavor in, work with the team on that because we know that flavor is going to do more than the other one, or I could lose it and then go down to 4. So you never want to be in a situation where you're losing it and going down to 4. You always want to keep innovating to make sure that number 5 just remains, if that makes sense. And also, what you've got to remember is, I've got a brand in the supermarket, but there's probably like 100 other brands trying to get me out, to get themselves in. So again, it's making sure that you're consistently marketing, consistently promoting, consistently talking about your brand, consistently in the, with the buyers, just creating the story and the category on how we grow, so that you don't become a casualty of somebody else coming in with like loads of money to spend on, shelf space and all that kind of stuff.
So I know it's fast moving, but does it feel fast moving when you're in it?
Yeah, 100% feels. Well, yeah, to me, I'm so used to it, but it's when I speak to people that are like, oh, this is fast. Like I speak to our branding agency and they're like, us versus some of the other clients they work with. They're like, my goodness, you like need to send this in and then do this tomorrow and then this, that, and this, that. And I'm like, okay, oh, wow, yeah. But to me, it's just normal because that's the speed at which we have to operate to win.
Yeah. And tell us a bit about the Channel 4 opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. So Channel 4 did this. So teamed up with Lloyds Bank, of course. They did this campaign called Black in Business, right? And the whole idea was that they did a lot of research and they could realize that there are hardly any black-owned brands that ever get TV airtime because it's so expensive. So obviously it's true, but also it's so expensive, but also there's a lack of black-owned brands at a scale that would, it's expensive, but even be able to think about affording that or even have the distribution to warrant it, and I say distribution to warrant it because if you're doing a TV ad and you're not available anywhere, then no one can buy you, so it doesn't really make sense. But what that scheme did, right, so you had to apply online, then you did like a kind of almost like a video interview, then a face-to-face interview. And the whole idea was that Channel 4 would fund, and Lloyds Bank would fund a TV advert, which went live in January of 2024. So we were gladly one of the winners of it. So exciting. Us and 4 other brands, so 5 brands in total. And it was just fantastic. So we managed to get our ad out. I was on TV with Judy Love, which was amazing, the comedian. And we saw some great uplifts from it, in terms of like website to, web traffic and all of that kind of stuff. We did it in January so it's always so hard to tell in January whether it's actually like worked significantly or not. But what we did do is, we started to measure the brand awareness and how that kind of came out at the other end, and the brand awareness was up. People that watched it recognized us later and all of those kind of stats and facts, which was amazing. But like I say, January's hard because you've got that health halo anyway of people going, new year, new me, want to get back into health and fitness alongside the ad, that kind of delivered that. So no, it was so exciting to be on that. That was our first ever TV ad. And now we'll consider, in the next couple of years, whether we actually do our own TV ad or whether actually TV might not be the solution for us, because how many people watch TV nowadays? It's slowly declining. So whether that's video on demand, different marketing metrics and places where we can advertise.
Yeah. And in terms of branding, how much of, so a new entrepreneur, how much of it do you think should be the product versus the founder? Because I think some of them don't really get that balance right. So you see a lot of it where it's like, I know everything about the founder, but I actually don't know what it is that they're selling, or vice versa. I know the product, but I don't even know the person behind it or the story behind it.
That's a very hard question. I don't know if I've got the perfect answer for it, but I'm going to try my best, right? So what you want people to sell, what you want people to buy is the product. So if they don't know what the product is, then there's a massive challenge there in terms of how do you get people to buy anything from you. You can say who you are as a founder, scream and shout, but again, you really need that product to jump out in terms of USPs. I think there's probably a sweet spot in terms of 70% product, 30% founder maybe. And then hopefully what you aim to do is you aim to reduce that founder reliance, because you want to start to build a business that can look after itself without the essence of the founder behind it, if that makes sense. Because again, a lot of people talk about this on Instagram. If you ever wanted to sell your brand or you ever wanted to get investment and they're like, it's solely reliant on this founder, then you're not in a great place. Whereas if you've got a good business that could perform by itself without the founder and like a management team or someone like that, then you're in a much better place and without the reliance. So you start at that 70-30 and then hopefully you kind of balance it upwards, if that makes sense. But again, it's hard to answer because it also depends on the type of product that you're selling, if you see what I mean. Let's say, for instance, you're selling a dress. Yeah, let's say, I was going to say a dress. You're selling a dress, right? That's going to be more the dress than it is the founder. you're selling services, you're an accountant, that's going to be more the founder because they believe you than it will be the product to start off with. A little bit, if you see what I mean, right?
Yeah. And in terms of sacrifices, are there sort of like key moments where you kind of like had to choose the business over something else, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much every day, so spending time with my wife, spending time on holidays, kind of working on weekends and evenings, every day is a sacrifice. But for me, what you have to do is you have to figure out balance, right? So, and importance. So if today it's the important thing is to go for dinner with my wife or to go and see my family, that's what we do today. Tomorrow, if it might be business, and all you do is you spend your life kind of almost flipping and merging between the two without one of them feeling like it's really not being taken care of. Obviously, we're having a baby soon, so that will probably change. But yeah, for every day it's sacrifices. It's, can't go to this event because I've got a presentation to do for Tesco, this week. There's a party going on in the evening, but I've got an early morning meeting at a factory to go to. So again, every day's sacrifices. But it depends on how committed you are to the cause. Like, nobody wins anything in life without making sacrifices.
Who are your entrepreneurial influences?
Ooh, entrepreneurial influences. Oh, that's a really tough one. But I'd say I like Jimmy Iovine, who helped Dr. Dre create Beats by Dre. That's a really incredible story in terms of like going from something to nothing. But then there are like just people in everyday life that I think about. Like you just look at Dean Forbes, for instance, such an inspirational guy in terms of how you work in a business, but also maximize your own opportunity within the business. You look at Wilfred Emmanuel Jones, of course, who helped me on this journey too. You look at people like Emma Greed, who also came from East London, but now Skims, is co-founder of Good American and stuff like that. So I look at so many people around me, and you kind of almost pick different things from different people that do that. But to say that I follow this one person on this journey probably isn't right. It isn't. I listen to a lot of podcasts as well. Kind of Diary CEO, High Performance Podcast, Brand Growth Heroes. They're all kind of, some of them are FMCG podcasts, Hungry podcasts. Some of them are FMCG, some of them aren't. But again, for me, that's where I learn from other people, but not necessarily go, you are my business inspiration. I like to take little nuggets from people all over the place and think from there.
And in terms of the people that you surround yourself with, have they stayed the same throughout the journey, or can you reflect and say, actually, there's been a change now and my circle is different to what it was, let's say, 10 years ago?
No, my circle is literally pretty much the same, to be honest. I've only got a few tight friends, close friends, and then everybody else, obviously it evolves. But in terms of like the people that are close to me, it's literally stayed the same. Like, I just think of myself as I'm a normal human being just on a mission. That's literally it. You don't ditch your friends and go find new friends because of that. And also it's always hard to make new friends anyway, just in life in general, because you don't necessarily have the history there. Not to say that's impossible. But yeah, no, I've stayed the same, will remain the same. Just like I say, want to win for myself, for my customers, for my family, and just create a better life, better future. I always think about this growing up in East London and going, I wouldn't want any of my kids to ever go through that in the future. So how do I build them a better life? But also, how do I help? This business is here to change people's lives, to make them eat healthier, to help them feel better about themselves. So we're trying to make change all round. It's all about that change. And then the other piece of change is, how do we change the scope and the shape of FMCG to become a lot more diverse, and people acknowledge the challenges that are faced in this industry.
And can you talk a little bit about how social media, I mean, I know that you used it in terms of building that community, but you did do a lot of the legwork yourself, but the role of social media in FMCG, because I don't think that's something that's necessarily always linked.
Yeah, is it linked? Maybe not, to be honest. But to be honest, the role of social media in FMCG, I guess that's also a really interesting one, right? Because you'll always see people posting and talking about products and what products have done for themselves. But on the flip side, when I think about my business and the role of social media, you started to see the rise of all the TikTokers and the healthier, looking, everybody's got muscles, everybody's got abs, everybody's aspirational now. So they all want to look like a certain figure. They go extra in the gym, they eat well, they eat clean. So I'd say it's been super helpful, but also it's been great in that educational piece as well. So this is where FMCG, I guess, does shine a real light, because people start to talk about ultra processed foods and the foods that work for them and clean eating, and you've got the likes of kind of Eddie Abu on the carnivore diet, and more people popping up like that. Tonic Health on where he goes into supermarkets and he says, this is bad for you, this is good for you, this is bad for you, this is good for you. You've got a lot of that. So I guess it's then deciphering what's good information versus what's bad information. I saw this clip the other day, which was very, very interesting, right? And it was like, fruit's bad for you, sugar's bad for you, don't drink water, don't drink this, don't drink that. And then the person was just like, ah! And that is where you're getting to on social media. And that was a clip of, I want to say 5 or 10 different influencers popping in and out with their different pieces of, don't eat potatoes, don't do this, with their different pieces of advice. So it plays a big role in FMCG, but it needs regulating in some sort of way, shape or form, in that misinformation can be easily spread and everything is individual specific in terms of diets, conditions, etc., etc.
Have you thought and dismissed or something for the future around sort of the fast food or restaurant space?
Yeah, we've looked at it. Restaurants don't really make too much money, in all honesty, but it's something that we've looked at, and it's something that we'll keep on consider looking at. You look at what Leon have done, what Itsu have done, what Pret have done, and you give them their hats. You have to clap for them. And if we could even do that on a small scale of 2, 3, 4 places, I think that would be a fantastic achievement, and definitely one for us to look at later down the line for sure.
And how, I know you funded through work and consulting, but how typically are products like yours funded?
Yeah, so you've got 3 different ways of funding, really. So there's self-funding, which is what I've done. Angel investment, so which is where you find someone in the community or in and around your community, tend to be like a high net worth individual. Sometimes it's not even a high net worth individual, because when I talk about angel investing, anyone could do it. Anyone could put, you go onto those websites like Crowdcube and you put £100 into a brand, and you get 500 people doing that. Then you've got money. Do you know what I mean? So it's that. Then you've got like investment, which is venture capital, but also private equity. So venture capital tends to be when you're a bit bigger, and that's where you've got like a wealthy individuals put money into a fund. That fund then invests in loads of different businesses, and then private equity is when it's a big kind of almost bigger fund. They buy certain parts of the business with the aim that they might run it at some point in time. So yeah, there are loads of ways, but that's the investment side. What people don't understand actually is debt is a good way to fund business as well, right? One of the things when lockdown happened, obviously people were getting bounce back loans and stuff like that to be able to try and grow their business, and that's a low percentage loan. There are invoice factoring as well. So invoice factoring is a thing where, let's say for instance, you've got an invoice of £100 that's owed to you. The bank might pay you £90 for it. And then they take their £10 just so that they can get that back early. Do you see what I mean? That's an extreme case, but it's something like it's like that. And then obviously like I say, loans, overdraft, Virgin startup. I remember they had a really good like startup loan which came with mentoring, kind of to then help steer you, and all of these are personal guarantees. And I guess in the Black community, we always shy away from that because you don't really want to get in debt over a business. And that's why I say try your best to do everything you can with your money to validate the concept first of all. So the concept validation is the piece where I'm like, make sure that this thing is actually going to work. And if you don't think it's going to work, then why would you spend so much time and effort into it? Because it's only going to keep on increasing. So if you validate it, you understand it's going to work, then you can spend money or go get money from elsewhere in order to do that. And some people say, actually, why should I use my own money to do that? It just, I say it limits the risk in terms of you then reputation, debt, potentially bringing people in, that again, won't trust you again, all of that kind of stuff, really.
Are you committed to bootstrapping yours, or are you kind of open to not boost.
Yeah, at some point we might take investment, but for now it's working, and that for me is, if it's working, it's working, you know. But again, if we're looking at a strategic partner, it will be someone that can bring something to the business that would then help us elevate to another level. But right now, like I say, it's working. We're able to reinvest. We're able to grow. You know, we're doing well for our manufacturers. We're doing well for our retailers. So we're doing well for our customers, who are the most important. So let's keep on rocking.
And where do you see it in sort of like 5 years? Because it is, you know, these things change quite a lot overnight. But where would you
Definitely.
see the business in like 2030?
Yeah, 2030. Wolf, that sounds crazy. That does. Look, I want to build the global household name for, you know, kind of health, right? So that could be more categories. Like you say, it could be restaurants, global expansion. You know, you start to look at the US, Europe. What does that look like? How do we go further afield? But again, it just comes back to this. We want to make sure that we are helping people live healthier, live better, and kind of help them on that journey. You know, you start to look at the different diets that exist out there as well. How do we help them along that? You know, things like keto, obviously they were a buzzword before, but what's next? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's Ozempic, which is a drug that's helping, you know, people lose weight quite quickly. We would never do anything like that, but people have to eat food to maintain themselves after they've used the weight loss kind of almost injections and stuff like that. We wouldn't encourage that. But again, it's how do we make sure that we are future-proofing ourselves for what may happen later down the line.
And where can people find the Gym Kitchen online? And
So stores, we're available in Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's, Morrison's, Co-op, Ocado, and Amazon. You can buy some of our products online, which are our ambient staple ones. So ambient means like cupboard staple. So like our brains pouches and our instant noodle pots. So yeah, we're available in all of those retailers across a number of different categories. So if you actually head over to our website, www.thegymkitchen.com /store locator, you'll be able to see all the different ranges that we do and also where they're available.
Well, thank you. This has been really enlightening. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
No worries. Thank you so much. Look forward to hearing everyone's feedback.